I'm Jeff Whitworth with the entomology department at Kansas State University. I'm an extension entomologist, extension specialist, basically IPM, integrated pest management, or field crops. We do a lot of research and extension, which extension is just education outside of a formal classroom for Kansas State University relative to entomology or insects. The Kansas Soybean Commission has been great, allowing us to receive funding to do a whole variety of different research projects, which we think have been applied and are being applied and will be applied to for the growers and the soybean producers around the state. We probably put in for our first grant 8 or 9 years ago, and it was on Dectes soybean stem borers, which we're still doing today. The Dectes stem borer is a real problem in Kansas, but really only about the western 2/3 of the state. Why it's not a problem in the eastern third of Kansas, we don't know. It is a problem in southeastern parts of the United States, Georgia, Arkansas, but not in the southeastern part of Kansas. But it is a problem in the western 2/3. The soybean stem borer, it is, we can kill it or we can control it with insecticides, but the problem with the stem borer, the population becomes an adult probably around the 4th of July, and they're out laying eggs July, August, September, and the eggs hatch, the larvae crawl inside the stem where they're inaccessible to insecticides. So with that kind of an oviposition period or egg laying period, you have to make 2 or 3 applications of insecticides in order to manage the Dectes stem borer. That's just not feasible. It's not economically feasible for our soybean producers. So, and we've looked at a lot of other management techniques, which the Soybean Commission has and are funding. One of them to review a bunch of different accessions for resistance to the soybean stem borer. We have found a little bit of resistance, but it's going to be a while before it becomes commercially available. Some of the other pests that we're currently looking at, or we have looked at, number one is the soybean podworm. We can control them pretty much in the other crops, but in soybeans, not so much. The reason why is because when the soybean podworm doesn't overwinter in Kansas. So it comes from the southern states, from the overwintering states, and by the time it gets up here, it's usually mid-June to mid-July, and a lot of times our conventionally planted soybeans have pretty well established canopies by then. And so anytime you're trying to treat, a lot of times it's from the air. It's an aerial application. It's really tough to get the material, the insecticide, which are contact insecticides, through the canopy to where the insects are. So one of the things we've been working on is the timing, trying to develop some timing models that maybe we can anticipate when the moths are going to be out laying eggs, so maybe we can time if we decided we needed to treat, to time our applications a little better based upon the model, based upon when they're leaving different parts of different states, on their way north, as you will. And that's one of the things we're trying to do. They feed on, it's really, they have a unique, they'll feed on the leaves so they can be defoliators, but usually by the time they arrive in Kansas and we're worried about them in soybeans, they feed on the marketable product. They feed on the bean inside the pod. And so as you know, that can decrease your yield rapidly if they're feeding on the beans and opening them up to desiccation and other things. So that's one of the things we want to look at. Also stink bugs. Stink bugs are very cryptically colored. They're very shy, so you don't obviously notice they're out there, but a lot of times when you go to harvest your beans, you realize you only have a third or a half of what you did, and you look at the beans and they're small and they have wrinkled seeds. That's pretty indicative of a stink bug infestation prior to that. So one of the things we're also trying to do is develop some sticky traps or some monitoring or trapping techniques to be able to trap or monitor or surveil the populations a little bit ahead of time. Again, try and get ahead of the situation. These are some of the research projects that we at Kansas State University Entomology Department are looking into that we hope we can get a handle on in the next few years with the help of the Kansas Soybean Commission.